Hello and welcome to the 8th video in the PowerShell Scripting series. In this video we'll go over if statements and with the usual PowerPoints and a couple of simple follow along with demos. If you find this helpful, please feel free to give it a like. If you'd like to see more content, we are working on getting a video out every week for at least the next couple months, so feel free to subscribe to follow along with that. And let's go ahead and get into the presentation. Alright, let's go ahead and get down into the PowerPoint presentation. From the Microsoft About If Statements page, it's a language command that can be used to run additional statements in a list based on the result of one or more conditional tests. They fall into the category of conditional logic. The program or script, in our case, it will stop everything else that it's doing and evaluate and then proceed from there. While loops also fall into this category. We went over while loops a couple videos back. They're used throughout scripts and programs to have specific code run based on whatever condition you'd like to test. If you'd like to test for a specific numerical value inside of output, or if you'd like to see, one of the things we'll demo is if a file exists, and we'll just do some basic output, writing the output, but there are many ways to go from there. They don't require an else statement to be included, and you can string multiple if statements together, nested inside of each other, without ever calling an else. It's a good idea to have an else and an out, and you want to make sure when you're nesting that you are writing the code you mean to inside of the level of the nest that you mean to, and we'll see some a nested demonstration as well, where you can get kind of confusing if you're not familiar with it, or if you kind of miss a step and aren't paying attention for a second, you can run into an issue that could have you debugging for a little while. Standard syntax is what we see out of our regular commands, where we initialize with the if. We have a variable. This can be anything in the world, an address, a telephone number, a process or a service ID, a process ID I should say. We want it to match something. Maybe we want it to be equal or greater than something. We can do all of these things. And then whatever we need we can write the code inside of the blocks. And again, this is one that wouldn't need necessarily. We want to do something, and maybe else if we would write if we needed to match another value like a 3. In our second example, we are initializing again, only this time we have the exclamation point, which basically asks if it matches a true or false Boolean condition. And that condition can be generated from a few different areas. We'll generate one from the test path command, and then from there we will be able to see if it exists, do something. If it doesn't, we'll do something else. Maybe we'll create the file if we need to, store the output we need inside of it. We'll look at some simple demos here shortly, and I believe that is about it. We'll go ahead and take a look at them. Okay, the first thing we'll need to do is open up PowerShell. Go ahead and navigate to our desktop directory with our PowerShell folder. Go on into there. We'll open code with the code.format. Here we'll just create a new file and name this PS08 demos, demo. Switch the file format to .ps1. Go ahead and save that. So in this first demonstration, we'll take a look at getting some services that are running. So we'll store a current snapshot of the services in a variable called services. That'll run the command get service there and store everything as we've seen in previous videos. Then we'll also tie in a for each loop here, which we did in the previous video. We'll say for each service in services. And then we can tie in an if statement here. This is where we start to get nested brackets, but we'll say if service.status. If you're not familiar with how to figure out what the options are, what kind of methods or variables we have to run, we can go ahead and do a get member of the variable that we have. So if you do a get member on services, you'll see that it'll print out a service.status as an option. So we'll say if service.status, if it matches running, so if the status matches running, we'll go ahead and write some output. We will write the service, and this should actually just be the service. If we want all of the basic information that we would get out, we're just going to get the name here, and we'll do a demonstration with both. But we can go ahead and pipe that output to a where clause, and now we are 3 code blocks deep. So it's good to use a text editor like VS Code that'll kind of keep it separated for you. You can see those closing brackets, but here we want to go ahead and pipe it to where object, so code stops freaking out. We'll say where object of the service.name matches W. So let's say we needed to find the Windows services that were running that match W. We can go ahead and save this and bring up our console a little bit here and run our script. And we get the services that, and this is just the name, this is what I'm talking about, where it's not as useful just to get the name, because some of these you might think, well, those don't start with W, or the names actually do contain it, but here we can take the .name out of service here. There we go. And this will return all the basic information for the services. And see here we have the status, the display name, and the name. So the names contain W's. That's why they are returned. So if we wanted to look at the services that were stopped, just to make sure our statement is working, we can see that it's a different list of services, and in fact, statuses are stopped. It is basic usage of an if statement without any kind of else statement or else if statement. But just to go ahead and make sure that the if statement was working, what happens if we take it away and then do the write out for each service and services? We would probably expect to see all of the running services, whether they were stopped or running, all at once. And that is, in fact, what we see here. Again, basic if statement without an else. There's other ways to grab this information, but this is one demonstration of how to use the if. So we'll go ahead and comment this on out. And then actually, after I did this, right after I started this part of the demo, the second if, the virtual machine I was using crashed, and I ended up resetting the environment in a different virtual machine, and we'll be using that one going forward. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the point where I have that all set up, and we will pick it back up then. Okay, rebuilt the environment in a new VM, got everything pretty much set up the same, except I created a separate folder for each video inside of the Powershell folder, but created a file inside of there called iftest.txt, and that is also with the demo.ps1 that we created before the first demo. So we'll go open code back up. So we have our first if there, and we know that we have a file in the PowerShell 08 directory. So we'll start our second if. And we'll just declare a file to be at the location. We'll just call it file. And we'll specify C users, our learning user. There's nothing there. We gotta go to desktop first, but then it does not want to autocomplete for me, so give me just a moment to get on in there. And one more, we'll see that we added the separate videos for each, or separate folder for each video. Specify 08. And we want to go ahead and also specify if text, or test.txt. So that is our file with the full path from the C drive root. We'll go ahead and run a test. Initially, I was failing some of my ifs for this demo, and that was because I wasn't actually storing the test path in a variable, so it was never actually passing the result that comes through. The result of test path is an true or false, so we can use the exclamation point to say that if test ends up being false is basically what it'll say. If test is not true, then we'll do something. We'll say file was not found inside of this directory. We'll just skip that part because it's kind of redundant. Else, and this would be the case where the file is in the directory, we can go ahead and just kind of do the opposite there and do another write output and say that the file actually was found. Apologies for the typing errors there. So this simple if will take a variable that is test. Test is a command. It is searching for a file at that location. And since the file is there and we know it, we would expect that the file would be found there. If we switch this to something else that would not be in there, we know that there's only a couple files there. We save that and we can just go back real quick and check inside of 08. In fact, that file name, something else is not in there, so we would expect this to return with the first condition in our if statement, which is that the file is not found. Let's see what happens, and that's exactly what we get. These are just a couple of simple demonstrations on how to use the if statement in PowerShell. This demonstration tied into a similar, or to a previous module in for each, and that'll be happening a lot more as we go forward and as we start to create scripts that will do some more interesting and functional things. Here, let's say we actually wanted to create a file there if it didn't exist. So if it's not there, we'll just go ahead and say new item, and we'll declare the path, and we actually have to declare the name separately. So we'll declare name to be something else .text, same way that we demonstrated. And actually did not notice I didn't spell that correctly. It doesn't matter. Might matter later when I want to display it in something, but here we can see that the command is run. The file was not there previously, and if we look again, now it is. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please consider liking and subscribing to see further videos in the future. Thank you.